Listen, your first decision is your most important decision. If you're not paying particular attention and analyzing that first decision, what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for a suboptimal outcome in the future. What's up, everyone? Brian here from Ride Your Money Wave, and I read an article today stating that Americans are saving more than ever before. We are saving on average 13.1% of all the money that we are making while we are in quarantine. And what I thought I would do is create a video today walking through the difference between the way the average person sets up a budget and the way a rich person sets up a budget. I'm going to do a video later on about the way rich people think versus the way poor people think, because mentality matters. Rich people think differently, and it doesn't come naturally. You have to study it, you have to remind yourself of it, you have to enact it in your life, and it takes time, years, before it becomes natural and before you start to really see the results. This was something that I couldn't really wrap my brain around when I first started on my financial journey. But once I took the leap of faith and started to enact millionaire mindsets, that's when, after years of practicing it, I started to actually believe that it worked. But what you have to do is really deconstruct the system of thought that you have in your mind. Take a look around and really just stop and analyze and say, hey, is this where I want to be in life? Could I enjoy more freedom? Could I utilize more money? And the answer is always yes, right? And so if you're not exactly happy with the way things are, then why not try a different system? Thinking like a millionaire and developing a millionaire mindset is one of the things that is a necessity, really, in order to open up opportunities so that you can make more money and, most importantly, become the master of your money as opposed to money mastering you. We're going to do a video on that. That is a big topic. It takes quite a bit of time to show you the differences, the way millionaires think versus non-millionaires. One of the baby steps that you can take in order to implement that is starting with your budget. Millionaires tell their money what to do. Millionaires are the masters of their money and the masters of their time. Poor people, on the other hand, money is the master of them. They have to do things that money tells them to do. They have to go to work. They have to work a second job, a third job. They have to go without. They have to say no. They have decisions and opportunities that aren't even presented to them because of, money dictates and says, hey, no, you can't afford that. Your budget and learning to master money is really the cornerstone of becoming wealthy. And so we're going to take some time today to simply show how millionaires set up a budget differently than non-millionaires. All right, first things first, we need to make some clarifications here. I like to view things through a binary lens, that is yes or no, on or off. And I think examining the extremes is really one of the best ways to delineate the differences between the two. Now, only 3.5% of American households have a net worth of $1 million. So that's going to be our line of demarcation, okay? The way rich people think and everyone else, middle class, upper middle class, poor people, we are just going to call them average Joes. We're going to call them average Joes because what I want to do is, in your mind, start to get you to think about not being average. You don't want to be like the 96.5% of everyone else. You want to be like the sliver, the 3.5% of millionaires out there. To do so, you have to understand that it's going to be uncomfortable, that it's not going to come naturally to you. You got to understand that millionaires think differently and they act differently. The average Joe seeks comfort and entertainment. Millionaires do not. Millionaires seek discomfort. They become comfortable being uncomfortable. Take this YouTube channel, for example. It is not exactly natural nor fun to talk into a camera. But I know that if I want to build a community of like-minded people who all share their money journey with each other, that's what we're going to have to do. So looking at a budget, first thing is first. This is so important in so many aspects of life, and that is your first decision is your most important decision. Once you take that fork in the road, it changes your future opportunities. It changes the decisions that you can make. So take vaping, for example. The first time you vape, that is your most important decision. Why? Because now you are far more prone to become addicted to vaping. And that is going to change how you spend your money. Now you're going to be spending more money on pods. Now it's going to change how you spend your time. Rather than reading a finance article or reading a book, you're going to be stepping outside so you can hit your vape, whatever the case may be. Your first decision is your most important decision because it affects and influences all future decisions. Take the purchase of this house, for example. When my wife and I bought this house, it was in the next league. We didn't even think that we were looking there, but we fell in love with the house and we ended up purchasing it. It's a little bit bigger than we had anticipated. And so that first decision to buy the house now influences all other decisions. Because the house is bigger, now we have to pay more in property tax. Because the house is bigger, now it costs more to heat and cool the house. It requires more electricity. It requires more furniture. It required more paint in order to paint it. I mean, there's all these additional decisions that some of them are actually reoccurring. Every year my property taxes are more expensive. Every month my heating and cooling bills are more expensive. And so that is all based on that very first decision. And I don't think the average Joe spends enough time analyzing their first decision. Most people make decisions emotionally. The goal is to make decisions based on data and logically, to make decisions rationally. And in doing so, you will make the best possible decision. You need to look at your decision from all potential angles, all potential outcomes. And that is a very difficult and time-consuming thing to do. You need to look at the opportunity cost of your decision. If I choose this, what else am I giving up in doing? How else could I use that money? And we actually made a video showing you how the opportunity cost of your dollar is huge in the future. So let's take a look at how the average Joe sets up a budget versus how a rich person sets up a budget, and pay particular attention to the very first decision that they make. All right, so if an average Joe is responsible, the very first decision they're going to make is they're going to put debts at the top. They are going to be responsible to those debts, and they are going to be paying off those debts. Now, in reality, this is arguable because right now we see that 12% of Americans are failing to pay even the minimum on their credit cards. So if the average Joe is responsible, the very first thing they're going to do is they're going to pay that debt. Then, after they pay that debt, then they are going to start asking the question, okay, how much rent can I afford? How much of a lease car can I afford? How much is that going to cost in utilities? And they start budgeting all those things. So debt, rent, lease, utilities, maybe a little bit of entertainment. They're going to have those credit card minimums in there. They're going to have miscellaneous, healthcare, you name it, going out to eat, groceries. And at the very bottom, after everything is spent, whatever is left over, that is going to be their savings. People say, I can't afford to save. Well, yeah, of course you can't afford to save. If the very last thing, the lowest on your priority is savings, why would you expect your savings to grow? Of course you're going to be living paycheck to paycheck. The statistics around savings are abysmal. Now, right now, we are saving 13% of our pay, but that's because we can't go outside. In February, we were saving 8% of our pay, and even that is considered somewhat better according to American standards. In the past, we see that our savings rate has dipped down even below 5%. So right now, America is doing pretty good at saving. But statistically, that is not always the case. For example, 28% of adults have no savings set aside for emergency, while 36% have yet to start even saving for retirement. Listen, if you want to become a millionaire, the very first thing you do when you turn 18 years old is you open up a Roth IRA and you start investing in low-cost index funds. It can be through Fidelity, it can be through Vanguard, it really can be through anyone. But 36% of adult Americans have zero set aside for retirement. That is scary. The average bank account balance is $4,400. 35% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. This is a common statistic that is thrown around. That is that almost half of Americans would not be able to cover an unexpected expense of $500 or less. And 25% wouldn't even be able to cover a $100 unexpected expense. $500. 500, guys, think about that. If you own a car, $500 is like getting your brakes replaced. I mean, if something happens to the transmission, you're out thousands. You need 6 months worth of living expenses saved at all times. That should be like priority number one. And once you have that safety net, then you can start building on top. The problem is think about building a house, for example. You want to build the tallest house, the tallest skyscraper that you possibly can. What's the very first thing that you do? Do you level the ground? Do you start planting bushes? No, the very first thing that you do is you dig down and you build a solid foundation. And the deeper you dig and the more solid the foundation that you make, the taller the building can be. Well, being able to manage your money and your mentality around money, building that relationship with money, that is building that solid foundation. It's no surprise that American savings rates are horrible because they largely don't have a good relationship or a good money mentality when it comes to their money. The good news is we see 29% of adults have an emergency fund that could last them 6 months. We want to be in that boat for sure. So the average Joe, notice the very common pattern in their spending. First, it's they spend, and at the very end, that is their savings. And look at what they're spending it on. They're spending it on rent, which doesn't build equity. They're spending it on a lease car, which arguably is not the way to go because you have no equity in it. You know, you're paying for the depreciation of that car, but once that car is paid off, if you were to buy it, that car is yours to drive for years and years and years. So let's switch gears and let's take a look and let's see how the millionaire budget looks. The very first thing that they do, remember, your first decision is your most important decision. The very first thing that they do is they save 20% of their income, and they save it for retirement purposes. That is my rule. You need to save a minimum of 20% of your income if you want to retire. Now, other people will say 10 to 15%, but I think between inflation and healthcare costs, more is better. So very first thing you do is you make it automatic and you save 20% of your income into either a 401k or a Roth IRA. Now, some people are saying, well, Brian, what if they match 5%? Do I only need to save 15% of my income because my employer matches another 5%? Listen, if you can live without it, save the 20%, let them match the 5%, and now magically you have 25%. You can either retire early, you can leave a legacy for your family, you can give to charitable causes that matter to you. I mean, having too much money is a real problem, but it is a good and fun problem to solve. It's a much easier problem to solve than not having enough money in retirement or not even being able to retire. 20%, before you even see that paycheck, the very first thing in your budget is you are going to save 20%. And that's going to go to your future self. Now you decide how to live on the remaining 80%. Remember, if you can't see it, you can't spend it. So the very first thing that I do is I sock away money to max out my retirement accounts, and then I learn to live on the rest. And now we start making some decisions. And so then it becomes, how much house can I afford? How much car can I afford? How much are my utilities going to be? How much are my groceries going to be? What about my entertainment budget? And I live my life according to my values. And then at the very end of the month, what else do I have? Oh, this is the amount of savings that I have. So notice that the average Joe barely saves once. The average Joe barely saves once. They save way down here at the bottom. But the millionaire mindset, the millionaire budget, they save twice. The very first thing that they do is they save for their future selves. And then the last thing that they do is they save whatever is left over. And if they're really good with their money, their savings that they have left over, what do you think they do with that? They turn around, they put it back at the top of their budget, and they invest it. Rule number 4 of money, you want your money to work for you, not you for your money. Now, we are talking really like looking at these budgets in 2020 hindsight. In order to get to this millionaire budget, are you going to have to probably pay off some debts? Sure. Might you have some student loan debts? Of course. Do you have a car payment that you need to get rid of? Why not? And so it's going to take time in order to, start dropping debts off. But once they're gone, please retire them. They are gone, okay? And then you start making better decisions with that freed up cash flow. One of the things that really shocked me is I did an interview with a gentleman named John from ESI Money. Fascinating blog if you haven't checked it out. It stands for Earnings, Savings, and Investment. And John retired with a net worth of $3 million at the age of 52. And I had him on the podcast. He had me on his blog. And one of the things that came up as he's interviewed hundreds and hundreds of millionaires is that most millionaires don't even have a budget. Now, is that because they make so much money that they don't need to pay attention to it? No. It's because the very first thing that they do is they save. And they max out all of their retirement accounts. They make sure that they have 6 to 12 months worth of living expenses. And with those safety nets already in place, how they spend the rest of their money really doesn't matter because there is enough of a buffer. And so that's the way, frankly, that I've been living my life with my budget, and I call it the no budget budget. Hopefully this helps you understand one of the very cornerstones of starting to acquire wealth, and that is your budget. The way the average person sets up the budget versus the way a wealthy person sets up their budget. And the difference is that their first decision matters the most. Live below your means. Pay yourself first. If you can't see it, you can't spend it. You will not miss that money because you will not know where it's going. You will never see it. And instead, you will save and invest it. And over time, that money will work for you and it will grow and it will increase your net worth to the point where it will do more of the heavy lifting than you. We've got a lot to talk about, which is why you need to subscribe to this channel, share them with your friends, and implement this information into your life so you can go out there and go live your best life. Till next time, take care, guys. So real quick, what I want to do is show you a calculation of how much money you can expect to retire with if you start saving at the age of 25 and you save for 40 years at a rate of 20%. Now, here's the deal. We could do a straight calculation, making $40,000 a year, saving that 20% or $8,000. Now, that leaves you with $32,000 to work with. That is very tough. But the good news is that you aren't going to be earning $40,000 for your entire life and instead you are going to be earning pay raises. So if we do the math at an 8% return, just with $40,000 saving 20%. Again, it's going to be tough to live on that. You are going to have to make some sacrifices, but remember that the earlier you get started, the more you're going to have, and as you get older, you should be earning more money. So if we were to run those numbers, just a straight $40,000 your entire life, you never made a penny more, and you save 20% of that, you would retire at the age of 65 with $2.3 million. Now, that immediately puts you in the upper echelon of retirees. You can have a very, very comfortable retirement. Many people would be envious of your nest egg. What we want to do is, what if you have an annual increase in your earnings of, say, 4%? You know, a little bit above inflation. If we were to do that, now suddenly you'd be retiring with $3.79 million, almost $3.8 million, and that's starting at the age of 25. So that is why, please, that is why it is so important that your very first decision is your biggest, your best, and most important decision. Save first. Pay yourself first. You need to put 20% savings at the very top of your budget, because that is how you will become a millionaire.